Jake spent the first day just watching Zara breathe. She lay on the metal bed without moving, her chest rising and falling in shallow, painful gasps. Sometimes she would make small sounds, like a hurt animal. Each time, Jake felt his heart break. A little more, the guards brought food twice a day. They threw it through a slot in the door and watched Jake through the bars. They seemed to expect him to give up quickly. "Stupid human," one of them said in broken English. "She is broken. Cannot be fixed. You waste time." Jake ignored them. He had learned that the guards enjoyed getting reactions from prisoners. When they got bored, they usually went away. On the second day, Jake tried to give Zara water. He lifted her head gently and held a cup to her lips. She didn't open her eyes, but she drank a little. Most of it spilled down her chin, but some went down her throat. "That's good," Jake said softly. "You need to drink. You need to stay alive." She didn't respond, but Jake thought he saw her eyelids flutter. The cell was basic but larger than his old one. There were 2 beds, a small table, and a waste area in the corner. The walls were smooth metal, and the only light came from a panel in the ceiling. Jake began to explore every inch of the space, looking for anything that might help. He found a loose panel near the floor. Behind it was a small space filled with old wiring and metal scraps. Jake began to collect these pieces. He had been an engineer before he became a miner, and he knew how to build things. On the 3rd day, Zara opened her eyes. Jake was sitting beside her bed, trying to clean one of her wounds with a piece of torn fabric. When he looked up, she was staring at him with eyes that were the color of deep water. She looked terrified. "Hello," Jake said quietly. "My name is Jake. I'm not going to hurt you." She tried to move away from him, but she was too weak. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Out. Jake could see the fear in her eyes, and it made him angry. Not at her, but at the monsters who had done this to her. "It's okay," he said, moving his hands where she could see them. "I'm a prisoner too. They want me to help you get better. I'm going to try, but I need you to trust me." She closed her eyes and turned her head away. Jake understood. Trust was probably something she had forgotten how to do. Over the next few days, Jake established a routine. He would wake up early and check on Zara. He would try to get her to drink water and eat small pieces of food. He would talk to her, telling her stories about Earth and his life before the HFY captured him. "I grew up on a farm," he told her one morning while trying to get her to eat some bread. "My grandmother taught me about taking care of things. She said that everything alive wants to keep living, even when it's hurt. You just have to give it a reason." Zara still wouldn't look at him, but Jake noticed that she listened. Her breathing would change when he spoke, becoming less ragged. On the 7th day, Jake made a discovery. He had been trying to understand why Zara was so broken. Her wounds were healing, but very slowly. Her body seemed to be fighting against itself. He remembered what the HFY noble had said. The Veltar people had healing powers. What if those powers were still there, but turned inward? What if her body was trying to heal damage that was being constantly renewed? Jake began to pay closer attention to when Zara seemed to be in the most pain. It was always when the guards were nearby, when they walked past the cell, when they brought food, when they made their cruel comments. Each time, she would curl up and shake. "You can feel them, can't you?" Jake asked her one evening. "You can feel what they're feeling, their hate, their cruelty. It's hurting you from the inside." She opened her eyes and looked at him. For the first time, Jake saw something other than fear in her expression. She looked surprised. Jake began to experiment. When he heard the guards coming, he would sit between Zara and the door. He would think about calm things, peaceful things. His grandmother's garden, the sound of rain on the roof of his childhood home, the way stars looked from the deck of his ship. It seemed to help. Zara's breathing would stay steady instead of becoming panicked. Her wounds began to heal a little faster, but Jake knew it wasn't enough. She needed more than just protection from the guards' emotions. She needed something to heal her spirit. On the 10th day, Jake found something that changed everything. Was exploring the cell again, looking for more useful scraps, when he heard a sound from the next cell. Someone was singing. The voice was weak but clear, and the language was musical and strange. Jake pressed his ear to the wall. The singing continued for several minutes, then stopped. Jake tapped on the wall gently. The tapping was returned. Over. The next hour, Jake managed to communicate with the prisoner next door. The being spoke some English, and Jake learned that it was also Veltar. Its name was Kira, and it had been a prisoner for 2 years. The girl, Kira said through the wall. She is young, very hurt. I can feel her pain from here. Can you help her? Jake asked. I cannot heal her body. My powers are gone. But I can teach you words, Veltar words. Words that might reach her mind. Jake spent the next 3 days learning basic Veltar phrases from Kira. The language was soft and flowing, very different from English. Kira taught him words for comfort, for safety, for hope. When Jake first spoke to Zara in her own language, she opened her eyes and stared at him in shock. I know I'm not saying it right, Jake said, mixing English and Veltar words. But I'm trying to learn. I want to help you. She tried to speak, but still no sound came out. Jake could see the frustration in her eyes. It's okay, he said. You don't have to talk. Just listen. Jake began to tell her stories in both languages. He talked about his home, about the stars, about the people he had known. He told her about his grandmother, who had raised him after his parents died. He told her about the first time he had seen a sunrise from space. Beauty still exists, he said one day while carefully cleaning her wounds. Even in this terrible place, there are still beautiful things. The way light reflects off your skin. The sound of your breathing when you're not in pain. The fact that you're still alive, still fighting. Zara's eyes filled with tears. It was the first emotion Jake had seen her show besides fear. That's right. Jake said gently, it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel sad. But don't give up. I'm not going to give up on you. By the end of the 2nd week, Zara was sitting up on her own. She still wouldn't speak, but she would nod or shake her head when Jake asked her questions. She would drink water when he offered it, and she would eat small amounts of food. More importantly, she had stopped flinching when he touched her. She still watched him carefully, but the terror in her eyes had faded to wariness. The guards had stopped laughing. They watched Jake's progress with growing confusion. How humans do this? One of them asked another in their own language. Jake had learned enough of their words to understand. She was completely broken. Now she moves. Does not matter, the other replied. She still cannot speak. Still cannot use powers. Still broken. But Jake could see things the guards couldn't. He could see awareness returning to Zara's eyes. He could see her body healing itself more efficiently. Most importantly, he could see her begin to trust him. On the 20th day, something wonderful happened. Jake was sitting beside Zara's bed, telling her about his ship and his crew. When she reached out and touched his hand dot, it was just a light touch, barely more than a brush of her fingers against his skin. But it was the first time she had voluntarily touched another living being in years. Thank you, she whispered. Her voice was barely audible, damaged by years of screaming, but Jake heard her clearly. They were her first words in the Veltar language, but Jake understood them perfectly. He felt tears running down his face. You're welcome, he replied in Veltar. You're going to be okay. We're going to get through this together. For the first time since he had met her, Zara smiled. Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked the mining equipment one last time. His ship, the Aurora, was small but reliable. For 3 years, he had worked the asteroid fields at the edge of human space, far from Earth and the busy trade routes. The pay was good, and Jake liked the quiet. Out here, a man could think. Captain, we've got a problem, called out Pete, his engineer. The older man's voice carried worry. Sensors are picking up something big coming our way. Jake moved to the bridge and looked at the display. His blood went cold. 3 massive ships approached, their hulls dark green and covered in sharp angles. He knew those ships. Everyone in human space knew them. HFY warships. How long before they reach us? Jake asked, keeping his voice steady. Maybe 10 minutes, Pete replied. Should I prep the jump drive? Jake shook his head. Too late. They're already jamming our systems. He turned to face his crew of 6 miners. Good people. All of them. They didn't deserve this. Listen up. The HFY don't usually kill humans right away. They like to play with us first. Stay calm, don't fight them, and maybe we'll live through this. The HFY ships surrounded the Aurora like hunters circling prey. Jake had heard stories about what these aliens did to captured humans. The reptilian race saw humans as nothing more than entertainment. They would force prisoners to fight in their arenas, watching with cold amusement as people died for their pleasure. The ship shook as tractor beams locked onto the hull. Jake felt his stomach drop as they were pulled into the largest HFY vessel. Metal groaned and lights flickered. Then everything went dark. When Jake woke up, he was in a cell. The walls were smooth metal, and the air smelled of chemicals and fear. His crew was gone. He was alone. Days passed. Jake learned the routine quickly. Guards would come twice a day to give him food and water. The food was barely edible, but it kept him alive. Sometimes the guards would hit him with shock sticks, laughing when he fell. Jake endured it all without making a sound. After a week, they took him to the arena. The fighting pit was huge, surrounded by seats filled with HFY nobles. The aliens were tall and thin, with green scales and yellow eyes that never blinked. They wore rich clothing and jewelry, looking down at Jake like he was an insect. Human, one of them called out in broken English. You fight now. You win. You live. You lose. You die. Simple. They pushed another prisoner into the pit. The man was human, but Jake didn't recognize him. He was thin and scared, probably captured. From another ship, the man had a knife. Jake had nothing. I don't want to fight you, Jake said to the other prisoner. Then we both die, the man replied, raising the knife with shaking hands. Jake had been a soldier before he became a miner. He knew how to fight, but he had never wanted to hurt innocent people. The HFY were forcing him to choose between his life and another man's. The crowd grew restless. They wanted blood. Jake moved fast. He grabbed the man's wrist and twisted until the knife fell. Then he hit him once, hard enough to knock him out but not kill him. The man fell to the ground, unconscious but breathing. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then they began to make sounds that might have been laughter. Jake stood over the unconscious man, waiting. Interesting, said the alien who had spoken before. Human shows mercy. Very stupid, very entertaining. They dragged the unconscious man away. Jake never saw him again. The fights continued. Week after week, they brought Jake opponents. Sometimes they were human. Sometimes they were other alien species the HFY had captured. Jake learned to win without killing when he could. When he couldn't, he made the deaths quick and clean. The HFY loved it. They had never seen anything like Jake before. Most fighters either died quickly or became savage killers. Jake found a third path. He won his fights with skill and tactics, not rage. He protected the weak when possible and honored the dead when it wasn't. Months passed. Jake's reputation grew. The HFY nobles began to bet on his fights. They gave him better food and a larger cell. They even gave him books to read, though they were all in alien languages he couldn't understand. One day, the guards came for him, but they didn't take him to the arena. Instead, they brought him to a large room filled with HFY nobles. The aliens sat on cushions around a low table, eating strange foods and drinking from golden cups. Our favorite human, said one of the nobles. This one was different from the others. He wore more jewelry and spoke better English. You have given us much entertainment, Jake Morrison. Jake said nothing. He had learned that speaking only made things worse. "We have grown bored with the fighting," the noble continued. "You are too skilled, too predictable. We need something new." The other nobles made sounds of agreement. Jake felt his heart sink. If they were bored with him, they would probably kill him. "So we have decided on a new game," the noble said, his yellow eyes gleaming. "A test of your human compassion, which amuses us so much." Two guards entered the room, carrying something between them. At first, Jake thought it was a bundle of rags. Then he saw it move. It was a girl, or something that looked like a girl. Her skin was pale blue and seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. She was thin, too thin, and covered in scars. Her hair was white and matted with blood. She didn't make a sound as the guards dropped her on the floor in front of Jake. "This is Zara," the noble said. "She is Veltar. Her people once had great healing powers. Very useful slaves, until we broke them." Jake knelt beside the girl. She was breathing, but barely. Her eyes were closed, and her body was covered in fresh wounds. Jake had seen torture before, but this was worse. This was systematic destruction of a living being. "What did you do to her?" Jake asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Oh, many things," the noble replied with obvious pleasure. "We removed her healing abilities. We tested her pain tolerance. We broke her mind. She has been our plaything for how long now? 3 years? 4? Jake felt sick. The girl couldn't be more than 20 years old. "Here's your test, human," the noble continued. "You have 1 rotation of our world to heal her. That is about 30 of your Earth days. If she dies, you will fight in the arena until you die. As well, if she lives but remains broken, you will serve as our entertainment forever. If you somehow heal her completely." The noble paused, and all the other aliens made sounds that Jake now knew was laughter. "Well, that is impossible. So, we do not need to worry about that outcome." The guards picked up Jake and the girl, carrying them back to the cells. They threw Jake into a larger cell, one with 2 sleeping areas. The girl was placed on one of the beds, where she lay without moving. Jake looked at her broken form and felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope mixed with despair. The Kefir thought they were giving him an impossible task. But Jake had learned something during his time as their prisoner. Humans were capable of things that aliens couldn't understand. Things like love, sacrifice, and the refusal to give up on someone who needed help. He knelt beside the girl's bed and gently touched her shoulder. She flinched but didn't wake up. "Don't worry," Jake whispered. "I'm going to help you. I don't know how, but I'm going to try." Outside the cell, he could hear the Kefir guards laughing at his foolishness. They thought this was just another game. They were about to learn how wrong they were. After Zara spoke her first words, Jake felt hope growing in his chest. But he also noticed something troubling. Even though she was getting better, she still had moments where she would suddenly curl up in pain, even when no guards were nearby. Jake watched her carefully over the next few days. You began to see a pattern. The pain would come in waves, always at the same times. Her body would tense up, and she would make soft crying sounds. Then, a few minutes later, she would relax again. "Zara," Jake said one morning after one of these episodes, "can you tell me what's happening? What hurts you?" She looked at him with those deep blue eyes and touched her chest, right over her heart. Then she pointed to her head. "Inside pain," she whispered in broken English. "Always inside pain." Jake sat down beside her bed. He had been thinking about this problem for days. From what Kira had told him, the Veltar were natural healers. Their bodies were designed to fix damage and restore health. But what if that ability was still working, but in the wrong way? "Zara," Jake said gently, "I think your healing power is still there, but I think it's trying to heal something that can't be healed." She tilted her head. Confused, Jake tried to explain. "When you were hurt, your body tried to fix the damage. But the hurt kept happening, over and over. So your body kept trying to heal, over and over. Now it doesn't know how to stop. Zara's eyes widened. She nodded slowly. Like ... double quote, she paused, searching for words. Like trying to fill broken cup. Water keeps spilling out. Yes, Jake said. Exactly. Like that. Your body is trying to heal trauma that never stops happening. Jake spent the next day thinking about this problem. If Zara's healing power was caught in a loop, trying to fix damage that kept renewing itself, then maybe the answer wasn't to fix her body. Maybe the answer was to fix what was causing the damage in the first place. He remembered what he had learned. About her people, they were empathic. They could feel the emotions of others. For years, Zara had been surrounded by beings who felt nothing but cruelty and hatred toward her. She had been absorbing all that negative emotion, and it was poisoning her from the inside. Zara, Jake said that evening, I think I understand now. The Kefir didn't just hurt your body, they hurt your spirit. And your spirit is what controls your healing power. She looked at him with interest. Every day you feel their hatred, their cruelty, their joy when they cause pain. All that poison goes into your heart and makes you sick. Your body tries to heal it, but it can't heal a broken spirit with medicine. Zara was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Feel them, she said softly. Always feel them. Hate, anger, joy, and pain. It makes me ... cold inside. Jake understood. Now, the Kefir had created a perfect torture device. They had taken someone who could feel emotions and surrounded her with the worst emotions possible. She was drowning in their cruelty. Then we need to change what you're feeling, Jake said. We need to give you something else to absorb. Jake began to work on this problem like he was fixing a broken machine. He started paying attention to his own emotions throughout the day. When he felt anger at the guards, he would force himself to think about something peaceful. When he felt despair about their situation, he would focus on hope and determination. It was harder than he had expected. Jake had spent months as a prisoner, and he had built up a lot of anger and pain. But every time he looked at Zara, he reminded himself that his emotions were affecting her healing. He began to practice what his grandmother had taught him about meditation. She had learned it from a book about Eastern philosophy, and she had passed it on to Jake when he was a troubled teenager. Clear your mind, she used to say. Find the quiet place inside yourself. That's where peace lives. Jake would sit beside Zara's bed and focus on creating that quiet place. He would think about good memories, happy moments, feelings of love and compassion. He would picture these emotions like a warm light, pushing away the darkness that surrounded them. At first, it didn't seem to work. But after a few days, Jake noticed that Zara's pain episodes were becoming less frequent. When they did happen, they were shorter and less intense. It's working, Jake told Kira through the wall one evening. She's getting better. You are a brave human, Kira replied. Most beings cannot control their emotions like this. Your people are strange, Jake smiled. We're stubborn. When we decide to do something, we don't give up easily. By the end of the third week, Zara was able to sit up for most of the day. She was eating more food and drinking water without help. Her wounds were healing faster now, and the scars were beginning to fade. More importantly, she was beginning to talk more. Her voice was still weak, but she was learning English words and mixing them with Veltar. Jake was learning her language too, with help from Kira. Why you help me? Zara asked one day. They were sitting together on her bed, and Jake was showing her how to braid pieces of cloth into rope. Because you needed help, Jake said simply. But I am not human. I am broken. Even other Veltar would not want me now. Jake stopped braiding and looked at her. You're not broken. You're hurt. There's a difference. What difference? Broken means it can't be fixed. Hurt means it just needs time and care to heal. Zara was quiet for a moment. Kefir say I am worthless. Say I am pet toy thing to use and throw away. Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. Getting angry wouldn't help Zara. The Kefir are wrong, he said firmly. You are not worthless. You are not a pet or a toy. You are a person with value and dignity, and nothing they did to you changes that. Tears filled Zara's eyes. How you know? Because I can see who you really are, Jake said. You're brave. You survived things that would have broken most people. You're kind. Even after everything they did to you, you're not full of hate. You're intelligent and curious, and you have a beautiful spirit. Zara reached out and took his hand. Her touch was warm, and Jake felt a strange tingling sensation where their skin met. Your emotions, she said quietly. They are different from others, clean, warm, like sunlight. Jake squeezed her hand gently. That's because what I feel for. You is clean and warm. I care about you, Zara. Not because I have to, but because I want to. That night, something amazing happened. Jake woke up to find Zara sitting up in her bed, her hands glowing with a soft blue light. She was holding a small cut on her arm, and as Jake watched, the wound closed and disappeared. My power, she whispered, staring at her hands in wonder. It's coming back. Jake sat up and moved to her bed. How do you feel? Different, she said. The pain inside, it's single quotes S ... smaller, quieter, like it's going to sleep. Jake smiled. That's because you're healing the right way now. Your body isn't fighting against itself anymore. Zara looked at him with tears in her eyes. You gave me back my power. You gave me back myself. No, Jake said. I just helped you. Remember who you were. The power was always there. You just needed to learn how to use it again. Over the next few days, Zara's healing ability grew stronger. She could close small wounds with a touch. She could ease pain and reduce inflammation. Most importantly, she could feel the difference between positive and negative emotions more clearly. Before, she explained to Jake, all emotions felt like noise, loud, painful noise. Now I can hear the difference. Your emotions sound like music. Jake was amazed by her progress, but he was also worried. They only had a few more days before the HFY's deadline. Zara was much better, but was she completely healed? Would the aliens honor their agreement? On the 28th day, Zara did something that surprised them both. She stood up, walked to the cell door, and placed her hands on the metal bars. Her hands glowed with blue light, and Jake felt a wave of calm wash over him. What are you doing? He asked. Practicing, she sighed. If they take us out of here, I want to be ready. Jake realized that Zara was no longer just surviving. She was preparing to fight back. Are you sure you're strong enough? Jake asked. Zara turned to him and smiled. It was the first real smile he had seen from her, and it was beautiful. I am strong enough, she said, because I am not alone anymore. We are together. Jake felt his heart swell with pride and something else he was afraid to name. In trying to save her, he had found something he didn't know he was looking for. He had found love. On the 29th day, Jake knew their time was almost up. Tomorrow, the HFY would come to judge whether Zara was healed. Jake looked at her as she sat on her bed, practicing with her powers. She could heal small cuts and bruises now, and her empathic abilities were working properly. But would it be enough? Zara, Jake said gently. We need to talk about tomorrow. She looked up from the small flower she had been trying to heal. Jake had found it wilted in a crack in the wall, and Zara had been working to bring it back to life. The flower was still brown and dying. I know, she said quietly. They will come to see if I am fixed. Are you afraid? Jake asked. Zara thought for a moment. Yes, but not of dying. I was ready to die before you came. Now I am afraid of losing what we have found. Jake understood. In the past month, they had created something beautiful in this terrible place. They had found friendship, trust, and something deeper that neither of them had dared to name. Whatever happens, Jake said, you are not broken anymore. You are whole. You are strong. Remember that. Zara nodded, but Jake could see worry in her eyes. They both knew that healing her powers was only part of what the Kefir had demanded. They wanted her completely healed, exactly as she had been before they captured her. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling and thinking about everything they had been through. He thought about the first day, when Zara had been barely alive. He thought about her first words, her first smile, the first time she had touched his hand. "Jake," Zara's voice was soft in the darkness. "Are you awake?" "Yes," he replied. "I want to tell you something I have never told anyone." Jake turned on his side to face her. In the dim light, he could see her lying on her bed, looking up at the ceiling. "Before the Kefir took me," she said, "I was a healer on my home world. I helped people who were sick or hurt. It made me happy to ease their pain." She paused, and Jake could hear the sadness in her voice. "But I was also lonely. Veltar healers feel everyone's pain when we work. We take it into ourselves to understand how to heal it. After years of this, I felt empty inside. I had given so much of myself to others that I had forgotten who I was." Jake listened without speaking. "When the Kefir captured me, I thought it was the end of everything good in my life. They took my power, my hope, my voice. They made me forget that I was a person with worth." Zara turned to look at Jake across the small space between their beds. "But you gave it all back to me. Not just my power, but my sense of self. You showed me that I'm more than just my ability to heal others. You made me remember that I deserve love and kindness, not because of what I can do, but because of who I am." Jake felt tears in his eyes. Zara ... "Let me finish," she said softly. "I want you to know that even if we die tomorrow, these weeks with you have been the happiest of my life. You saved me in ways that have nothing to do with healing powers." Jake got up from his bed and knelt beside hers. "You saved me too," he said. "I was becoming hard and angry. This place was turning me into something I didn't want to be. Taking care of you reminded me who I really am." Zara reached up and touched his face with her glowing hand. Where she touched him, Jake felt warmth and peace. "I love you," she said simply. "I know we have known each other only a short time, but I love you." Jake leaned down and kissed her forehead gently. "I love you too," he whispered. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the darkness, finding comfort and strength in their connection. The next morning, the guards came early. They found Jake and Zara sitting together, waiting calmly. Zara's hands were glowing softly, and the wilted flower beside her was now green and blooming. "Time for judgment," one of the guards said in broken English. "Nobles want to see the broken." "Pet." Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but Zara squeezed his hand. Her touch sent waves of calm through him. "I am not broken," Zara said clearly. Her voice was strong now, no longer the whisper it had been. "And I am not a pet." The guards looked surprised. They had never heard her speak with such confidence. They were escorted to the same room where Jake had first been given this challenge. The Kefir nobles sat around their low table, looking bored and cruel as always. The same noble who had spoken before gestured for Jake and Zara to approach. "So," the noble said, 30 days have passed. Let us see what the human has accomplished." Zara stepped forward. Her back was straight, and her blue skin glowed with inner light. She looked nothing like the broken creature they had thrown at Jake's feet a month ago. "I am healed," she said in clear English. The nobles made sounds of interest. They had not expected her to speak so well. "Show us," the noble commanded. "Prove that your powers have returned." One of the guards stepped forward and cut his arm with a knife. Green blood flowed from the wound. He held his arm out to Zara without hesitation. Zara placed her hands on the cut. Blue light flowed from her fingers, and the wound closed instantly. The guards stared at his arm in amazement. The nobles whispered among themselves in their own language. Jake could understand some of what they were saying. They were surprised and a little worried. "Impressive," the noble said finally. "But can You heal others? Can you take away pain and sickness as your people once did? Another guard was brought forward. This one was clearly sick with some kind of alien disease. His scales were dull, and he moved slowly. Zara looked at the sick guard with compassion, then placed her hands on his chest. The blue light grew brighter. Jake could feel the power flowing from Zara, warm and healing. The sick guard's scales began to shine, and his breathing became easier. In minutes, he looked completely healthy. The room fell silent. Even the cruel Kefra nobles seemed impressed. "And your empathic abilities?" the noble asked. "Can you feel what others feel?" Zara looked around the room, her eyes moving from one alien to another. Jake saw her face change as she sensed their emotions. "You are surprised," she said to the nobles. "You did not expect this to work. You are also afraid. You sense that something has changed, but you do not understand what." She turned to the guards. "You are confused. You have been taught that I am worthless, but now you see power that you cannot deny." Finally, she looked at Jake. Her expression softened. "And you," she said with a smile, "you feel love and pride and hope. Your emotions are like warm sunlight after a long, cold night." The noble stood up, his yellow eyes narrow with suspicion. "You appear to be healed," he said slowly. "But there is something different about you. You are not as you were before." Zara lifted her chin proudly. "You are right. I am not as I was before. Before, I was just a healer who could take away pain. Now, I am a healer who understands the difference between pain that teaches and pain that destroys. I am stronger than I was before you tried to break me." Jake felt his heart swell with pride. Zara was not just healed. She was transformed. "How?" the noble demanded. "How did the human accomplish this?" Zara looked at Jake with love in her eyes. "He did something you do not understand. He showed me kindness without wanting anything in return. He protected me from your cruelty with his own spirit. He gave me a reason to want to live again." She turned back to the nobles. "You broke my body and tried to break my mind. But you could not break my heart because you do not understand what the heart truly is. Jake does. His people do. They know that love is stronger than hate, that compassion is more powerful than cruelty." The noble sat back down, clearly disturbed by Zara's words. "The terms of our agreement have been met," he said reluctantly. "The human has healed you completely." Jake felt relief wash over him. They had won, but then the noble smiled and Jake's relief turned to dread. "However," the noble continued, "we have decided that we enjoy this game too much to end it now. You will both remain our prisoners. The human will continue to fight in the arena, and the healer will tend to our wounded. This arrangement pleases us." Jake felt rage building in his chest, but before he could speak, Zara stepped forward. "No," she said firmly. "That was not the agreement," the noble laughed. "You are in no position to demand anything, pet." Zara's eyes began to glow with blue light. "I am not your pet," she said, her voice growing stronger. "I am Zara of the Veltar, and I have been healed by love and compassion. You have no power over me anymore." The light around her grew brighter, and Jake could feel waves of power flowing from her. The guard stepped back nervously. Jake gave me back my power, Zara said, "but more than that, he gave me back my purpose. I know now why I was meant to survive your cruelty. I was meant to help others who have suffered as I have suffered, and I will not let you stop me." Jake stepped up beside her, taking her hand. Her power flowed into him, making him feel stronger than he had ever felt before. "We're leaving," Jake said to the nobles, "and we're taking every prisoner on this ship with us." The nobles' eyes widened with alarm. "You cannot escape. This ship is surrounded by guards. You will be killed before you reach the door." Zara smiled, and Jake felt her love and confidence flowing through their connection. "Then you do not understand the power of two hearts that beat as one," she said. Jake knew that whatever happened next, they would face it together. The moment Jake and Zara declared their intention to leave, the room exploded into action. Guards rushed forward with shock weapons drawn. The nobles shouted orders in their harsh language. Alarms began to sound throughout the ship, but Zara was ready. Her hands blazed with blue light, and she sent waves of energy toward the approaching guards. The energy didn't hurt them, but it confused them. They stumbled and fell, their minds overwhelmed by sudden feelings of peace and calm. "This way," Jake said, grabbing Zara's hand. He had spent months learning the layout of this ship, and he knew there was a service corridor behind the noble's chamber. They ran through a hidden door that Jake had noticed during his first visit to this room. The corridor was narrow and dark, filled with pipes and electrical cables. Behind them, Jake could hear the guards recovering and giving chase. "Where are we going?" Zara asked as they ran. "To get the others," Jake replied. "We can't leave without them." Zara's empathic abilities guided them through the ship's maze of corridors. She could sense where other prisoners were being held, feeling their fear and pain like beacons in the darkness. "There," she said, pointing to a heavy door. "Many prisoners behind there." Jake tried the door. It was locked with an electronic system he didn't recognize. "Can you override it?" Zara placed her hands on the control panel. Her healing power had always worked by understanding living systems, but she was learning that energy was energy, whether it flowed through flesh or circuits. The panel sparked, and the door slid open. Inside were dozens of prisoners from different species. Jake recognized some humans from other ships, but there were also aliens he had never seen before. All of them looked thin and scared. "We're getting out of here," Jake announced. "Anyone who wants to come with us, follow me now." Most of the prisoners were too weak or too frightened to move, but about 20 of them struggled to their feet. Among them was Kira, the Veltar who had helped Jake learn Zara's language. "My young sister," Kira said when she saw Zara. She spoke in Veltar, but Jake understood enough to know she was amazed by Zara's recovery. "No time for reunions," Jake said. "We need to move." They made their way through the ship, Zara's abilities, helping them avoid patrols. But Jake knew they couldn't keep this up forever. The ship was huge, and there were hundreds of guards. Eventually, they would be cornered. "Jake," Zara said suddenly, her voice filled with worry. "I sense something." Ahead. "Many guards waiting for us." Double quotes. Jake stopped and listened. He could hear movement in the corridor ahead. The Kethfer had figured out where they were going and set up an ambush. "There's another way," Jake said, "but it's dangerous." He led them to a maintenance shaft that connected to the ship's power core. It was a narrow space filled with energy conduits, and one wrong move could electrocute them all. But it was their only option. One by one, they crawled through the shaft. Jake went first, testing each section to make sure it was safe. Zara came behind him, using her powers to heal the cuts and burns that the prisoners got from the sharp metal edges. They emerged near the ship's escape pod bay. Jake's heart sank when he saw it. There were only 4 escape pods, and each one could hold maybe 5 people. They had 23 prisoners to evacuate. "Not enough pods," one of the human prisoners said, voicing what everyone was thinking. Jake studied the pods carefully. He had worked with similar systems on mining ships. "I can modify them," he said. "Remove the safety systems, pack more people in, but it will be dangerous." "How dangerous?" Kira asked. "Some of the pods might not make it," Jake admitted. "And even if they do, you'll have to reach the nearest space station on emergency power. It's possible, but barely." Zara touched his arm. "There's another problem," she said quietly. "I can sense the guards getting closer. We have maybe 10 minutes before they find us." Jake nodded. He had been thinking about this problem since they started their escape. There wasn't enough time to modify all the pods and load everyone safely. Someone would have to stay behind to buy time for the others. "I'll stay," Jake said simply. "No," Zara's voice was firm. "We go together or not at all." "Zara, listen to me," Jake said, taking her hands in his. "You can help these people in ways I never could. Your healing powers, your empathy, the galaxy needs what you can offer. I'm just one man." "You are not just one man," Zara said, tears flowing down her face. "You are the man who saved me. You are the man I love. I will not leave you." Jake felt his heart breaking. He loved her too, more than he had ever loved anything. But he also knew what he had to do. "Remember what you told me about being a healer," Jake said gently. "You said you take pain into yourself to understand how to heal it. This is my pain to take. Let me do this for you." Around them, the other prisoners watched in silence. They understood what was happening, and they knew that Jake was right. Someone had to stay behind. "There has to be another way," Zara said desperately. Jake was about to answer when Kira stepped forward. "There is," she said quietly. "But you will not like it?" Both Jake and Zara turned to look at the older Veltar. "Our people have an ability we do not speak of to outsiders," Kira said. "In times of great need, we can share our life force with another. If Zara and I combine our powers, we might be able to create a barrier that holds the guards back long. Enough for everyone to escape. What's the cost?" Jake asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. "The one who creates the barrier will not survive," Kira said simply. "The energy required is too great." "No," Jake said immediately. "I won't let either of you sacrifice yourselves for me." "It would not be for you alone," Kira said. "It would be for all of us, for everyone we might help in the future." Zara was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then she looked at Jake with determination in her eyes. "There is a third option," she said. "What if we combine all of our strengths? Jake's tactical knowledge, my healing power, and Kira's experience. Instead of one person making a sacrifice, we all take part of the risk." Jake frowned. "What do you mean?" "The escape pods," Zara said. "What if we don't try to outrun the guards? What if we disable the ship instead?" Jake's eyes widened as he understood her plan. "The power core? If we overload it, it will disable all the ship systems. The guards won't be able to follow us." "But someone would have to stay to trigger the overload," Kira pointed out. "Not if we do it remotely," Jake said, his engineer's mind working quickly. "I can set up a delayed trigger. Give us enough time to get away before the core overloads." Zara smiled. "And I can use my powers to make sure the overload doesn't destroy the ship completely. Just disable it." "That might work," Kira said slowly. "But it will require perfect timing." Jake was already moving, pulling tools from his pockets that he had collected during their escape. "Then we better get started." For the next 8 minutes, they worked frantically. Jake rigged an overload device using spare parts from the escape pods. Zara prepared to channel her power through the ship's energy systems. Kira helped load the other prisoners into the pods. "Time's up," one of the human prisoners called out. "I can hear them coming." Jake finished his work and ran to the last escape pod, where Zara was waiting for him. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," she replied. They climbed into the pod together. As the door sealed, Jake triggered the overload device. They had exactly 3 minutes before the ship's power core would surge and disable all systems. The escape pod launched just as the guards burst into the bay. Jake watched through the small window as the Kefir fired their weapons uselessly at the departing pods. "Now," Zara said, closing her eyes and concentrating. Jake felt her power flow through the pod's communication system and back into the ship. She was using the ship's own energy network to channel her abilities throughout the vessel. 2 minutes later, the ship went dark. Emergency lights flickered on, but all main systems were down. The Kefir warship hung dead in space, unable to pursue them. "We did it," Jake said, hardly believing they had succeeded. Zara opened her eyes and smiled at him. "We did it together." Through the pod's window, They could see the other escape pods spreading out into space, each one carrying freed prisoners towards safety and hope. But Jake knew their real journey was just beginning. They had escaped the Kefir, but now they have to figure out what to do with their freedom. Where do we go now? Zara asked, as if reading his thoughts. Jake looked at her, this amazing woman who had changed his life so completely. Wherever we can help the most people, he said. There are other ships like this one out there, other prisoners who need rescuing. Zara nodded. Then that is what we will do. Together. Jake took her hand as their pod drifted toward the stars. Behind them, the Kefir ship grew smaller and smaller, until it was just another point of light in the darkness. They were free, and they were together. And Jake knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them the same way they had faced everything else, with love, courage, and an unshakable faith in each other.